Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining this TRC webinar. Today's topic will be how to deal with changes in PDF regulation for systems engineers. The presenter will be Jose Pereira, and first of all, we'll start with an introduction of the company. So the Reuse company was established in 1999 here in Madrid. We're still located here, at least the headquarters, and we have international offices in Miami, Stockholm, and delegation in Asia for the Asian market in Tokyo. And the mission of the company is to promote a reusable, scalable, and global solution to a smart and interoperable system engineering environment by offering a semantic, knowledge-centric approach. As you can see here, we have users across the globe, a presence in Europe, North America mostly, and some customers in Asia, Oceania, and South America. And in terms of industry, we are basically targeting different industries. We will show you the list of main references, but the common ground is that we are specialized in semantic technologies and artificial intelligence to improve the digitalization of the system engineering lifecycle. So the references, as I said, are broadly represented. So in terms of specialties, we have aerospace and defense, energy, healthcare, automotive for the main ones, and we have also other industries applying our solutions. So now that we ended up with the introduction, Jose, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Elias. Thank you very much for the introduction. And as you have mentioned, the topic of today's session is going to be how to connect to PDF documents and how to integrate them into your systems engineering lifecycle. So the first point of the presentation is going to be why connecting to a PDF, right? We're going to break down this section into two main parts. The first one are the pros of having PDF documents and why they are so popular in today's society, especially dedicated to the systems engineering part. And the second one is going to be specifically talking about which are the downsides of using this type of document. So without further ado, we're going to go on to the first key point, or the first positive point, which is going to be that it is very easy to secure any sort of PDF document by using a corresponding password, right? So you can control who and who doesn't, who is not, let's say, allowed to perform any modification. The second point is going to be that it is very easy to digitalize any sort of documentation. You can just take a picture and generate a PDF document from it, for example, a physical document, I mean. And you can also extract, let's say, almost all the different tools that we use in today's society, let's say, are capable of generating this type of files, right? Presentations, Word documents, even images themselves, right, can be converted from, let's say, any sort of tool. For the fourth point, it is that we can use them in any device, in almost any device, right? The personal computer mainly, and the mobile phones today. The next one is going to be the permanent format. It doesn't matter whether I open my PDF files inside my personal computer or my mobile phone, the format that they showcase is going to be the same, right? Which is not true for other types of files. And for the last one, it's going to be that it is very, very easy, extremely easy to share specifically, and the file size also accompanies this, and also to be printed, right? So you can share them within a company, between projects, so on and so forth. Now on to the cons of using these types of files. The first one is you will notice that this is hugely dedicated to systems engineering, right? The first one is going to be the lack of traceability, right? It is very difficult for a PDF file to be traced, specifically the different items within it to be traced with the corresponding ones that we want. So for instance, against the system requirements, the stakeholder requirements, the model, so on and so forth, okay? It is very hard to track every single change between different versions of the PDF file. So we know that regulations do not change very frequently, but they do change. And when they do, it is actually complicated to know exactly where the different changes have been occurring, right? And how they affect to each specific element. This drives into the next point, which is going to be the versions of these different items or statements. It cannot be kept and accessed at will. So once the version 2.0 comes into play, it is very difficult to have a track unless you have the specific document and you go through it once again to see which are the changes, right? The next one, sorry, is going to be the generation of baselines, right? So frozen images of the configuration for your entire document. As we mentioned before, if this is not integrated into your systems engineering processes, you do not have these frozen images available to you, right? And for the last one, it is of course that these different statements or work products, let's say, they do not have the possibility to be added attributes, right? So you do not have, let's say, an easy and accessible way to provide additional information for each particular item, okay? So we move on to the how to connect, let's say, these PDFs into your systems engineering projects. In order to do so, we have to be talking about the ASIA Studio. As you can see here, I just put here a display of all the different connections that we have available. And one of the latest and the one that we have been given almost the most importance is PDF files. And this is due to the need that we have identified coming from several of our customers and potential future users as well, of them having legislations, regulations, system requirements even coming from, let's say, other third-party companies, right? So this is very useful for them in terms of integrating this information, which of course is shared in a way that cannot be modified, but we would like to, let's say, apply systems engineering on top of it. So the first thing that I would like to discuss is the PDF connection workflow, right? This is going to be how we can actually, which is going to be the actual process behind what I will show you later in the use case, in the demo. And this is basically starting off with the first version of the regulations. So we have a PDF file and we have our systems engineering, the SES Engineering Studio. We establish, first of all, a connection, right? And this first step, let me highlight it for you. This parsing step, it seems quite easy, and it basically includes the configuration of the different extraction algorithms that you can apply, right? So this is where you can differentiate between a regulation or a system requirements document, for instance, right? So for the parsing, you could configure the specific structure of the system requirements or for the tool actually to extract the specific structure of these requirements, or also the format of the regulation that you want to extract information from, okay? So continuing with the process, the next step, as you can see on the bottom part, is going to be the attributes. So we can add or incorporate these attributes that we were mentioning before. The next step is going to be trying to integrate, let's say, this information with the rest of the documentation, which of course includes the stakeholder system requirements, documents that you have in your requirements management systems, but also includes the ALMs, the logical and physical models, simulation documents, etc., etc. Okay. And this is basically done by the use of the traceability management capability, which allows you to, once the different items or statements within the regulation or the document, the PDF document itself, are extracted and are within the SES Engineering Studio, you can trace using this capability, you can link these items, these work products, with the work products contained in the other side. In this case, stakeholder system requirements, models, so on and so forth. But now we move on to the next step, which is the interesting part. Let's say that in a year or in a couple of months, we have a new version, which is going to be called version 2.0. This new version is not going to use any different connection. We're going to be using still the same connection. And with the same connection, what we will have is automatically the tool is going to provide me with change and version management. This is basically showcasing which items are new, which items are updated or modified, and which items are removed with regards to the previous version, which is the one that I have stored within my tool. Okay. So I automatically have these changes in version management. And with this option, with this capability, I can save all this information and I can execute the algorithm for suspect traces. By this, what we would do is the tool would highlight which of the traces that I previously established are being affected by these changes, right? So the traces that contain an endpoint or a work product in one of the sites, which has been removed, will automatically be marked as missing, okay? You can inspect them, and then we will be able to remove them. We'll see later in the use case. The same applies to the updated ones, right? With this suspect traceability, I will be able to analyze the impact of the changes in the regulation automatically, and let's say make a decision about them, right? Without further ado, we're going to be, let's say, finishing here the theory part, and let's jump into the demo. So in this case, the first thing that we're going to be looking at is the international standard that we'll be used for this example. We'll be using for this example. Sorry, and in this case, this is a basic electrical appliances document. As I mentioned before, this can also be applied to any other PDF document, right? So system requirements coming from a third party, so on and so forth. In this case, as you can see, the structure contains quite a lot of text. Not everything has to be considered, right? The specific, let's say, statements that we would like to take into consideration for our systems engineering project, but there are others which are notes, which are added images, or simply descriptions that we do not want to bring, let's say, into our systems engineering project, right? So in this case, the interesting part is that within the SES Engineering Studio, we can have plenty of different connections. As you can see here, we have 4, okay? These 4, let me just stop here. These 4, as you can see, are corresponding to the system requirements, stakeholder requirements, a magic draw model, and a Capella model, right? As you can see, the connections can be to plenty of different sources, as I showcased before. But in this case, I would like to plug my PDF document, my regulation, into this SE project. In order to do so, I will add a new connection, which is going to be textual, of course, because in this case, we're talking about a PDF document which contains the regulation. For the first step, this is the configuration. This is what I was describing before. This is the first step in the process that we showcased in the previous slide. The first step is going to be the location. I can have 2 options, right? I can store the document in my local, let's say, personal computer, which is the option which is marked right now, or I can also store it inside the database, okay? This basically means that the document will be available, will be uploaded into the knowledge base, and will be available for all of my colleagues to be accessing to it, okay? Without having to have in their own personal computer this document, okay? The next step is going to be fundamental, which is the reading configuration. The first item or the first configuration is going to be whether or not I want to find new elements each time a new connection is established. In this case, I do want to have this option enabled because this option will allow me to, at the very moment that I include version 2.0, the tool is automatically going to be looking for the differences and providing me with the status for the change in version management that we were discussing before. The next step is going to be granularity, which basically differentiates between how precise do I want to be, so sentences or paragraphs. In this case, I'm, let's say, good with going for paragraphs only. And in the next one, I can search where I either in the entire document or I can select a specific section, right? You will see now that it takes a little bit for the tool because what it's doing, it's parsing throughout the entire document. And you can see here the index of the document itself, right? And I can select the specific sections where I want to extract the information from so that I avoid, let's say, extra time for the parsing process. In the third step, what we're going to do is basically configure, which is going to be the identifier for the work product extracted. In this case, for my regulation, I will just define a very simple ID with numerical length of 3, right? Because I expect to have quite a lot of different items. I also have the possibility to bring styles from the document. If the document has already styles, this is very useful for Word documents, for instance. But in this case, we'll not go into much detail. So for the fourth step, this is the most important one, right? So it is how to find or how to extract the information, right? And we have, as you can see, 4 different types of operation. The first one that I'm filling in right here is the textual one. As you can see, I just add a shell, for instance, and now if I were to proceed, every time that the tool finds a specific work product, let's say, or a paragraph with the shell contained within it, it's going to extract that as a work product. Okay. For the second one, we're talking about clusters, right? So clusters are basically groups of commonly semantic terms. In this case, well, you can have plenty of different domains. For the sake of the example, I'm going to select the modal verbs cluster. And in this case, this is going to contain shall, will, might, all these different verbs that I would like to be aware of throughout the entire PDF document. For the next one, what you are looking right now is basically a pattern, which is a structural template for the expected blocks that I, let's say, want or that I want to look out for inside the document. And as you can see in this case, this is a property requirement. So in the case that I would be parsing a system requirements document, this could be very useful to search for this particular structure and extract those items into my SCS Engineering Studio. The patterns can also be added in groups, right? So I can have, let's say, groups of system physical requirements, as you can see right here, which one of them is the pattern that we actually showcased before. You can have a group of patterns for state transitions if you have different versions of these state transition requirements. And the final one is going to be the regular expression, which is pretty straightforward, right? So you can define one and extract the information according to it. The final configuration is going to be the accuracy of the similarity algorithm. And this basically allows you to define how strict or how lax do you want to be in terms of the changes, right? So this basically means that if I place or if I select a 100%, the most minuscule change is going to be identified as a modification, right? The more to the left that I go in this, let's say, in this bar, it's basically indicating that I'm being more relaxed in the sense of if there's an extra, a period, or if there's an extra space, then the tool is going to not identify it as a modification itself, right? So a considerable modification. Okay, for the next step, there's going to be the module setting. And for this one, we're going to keep it real simple, and we're going to go on to the attribute section. And we're going to tackle one of the issues that we mentioned before, and is the lack of attributes that we have corresponding to be able to be applied to these different work products. Okay, normally I would add them manually, but for the sake of the example, as I have quite a couple of them that I wanted to include, I defined what we call an attribute glossary, and this is available for everyone to just synchronize with your connection, in this case with my PDF connection, and I can just import all of them and select which ones I want to actually be bringing into my connection. So in this case, I included some risks, right, for different teams, financial, legal, and technical, as well as a status and a section for additional comments. The security section is pretty straightforward. It is basically allowing you to apply a security configuration at the connection level. But in this case, as we have an application level security already defined, we will not modify it. Finally, we just provide a name to the connection, and we just click OK. And I will proceed to open the connection to see which is the first state of the document. You'll notice that the first thing that we have is going to be all of the items are going to be highlighted as new, right? As you can see here. And this basically means this column means or is related to the state within the repository. So within the SES Engineering Studio, the state is going to be new because all the items have not been identified before. One thing that we can do, which is pretty useful, is just click on the different items and we will be highlighted and moved on to the section corresponding to it, where those are located. This allows me to navigate pretty easily the document itself. And as you can see, we also have the different identifiers, right, that we have defined previously. So the rec slash and then the corresponding number. Another interesting capability that we have here is that we detected that there's a possibility that the parsing is not 100% always right? The word conversion from PDF to a Word file to be able to read it and extract this information is not always 100% of the time appropriate, and therefore there's always the possibility that there's an additional space, a new line in the middle of a statement, which can be quite annoying. And if you don't have the possibility to edit or to access some sort of edit mode to fix it, it can be a little bit frustrating, right? So for the sake of these use cases, we included the possibility to add or to access the edit mode and to be able to remove these additional spaces and new lines so that you can, let's say, find the work products properly and have your specification as you would like to. The next step is going to be related once again to the attributes. Now that we have included at the configuration level all these different attributes, we can display them by simply selecting which ones do we want here. Okay. This process is pretty straightforward, and you can actually select specifically which of the items, which of the columns and where do you want to include them. As you can see here, this is something that I include, and let's say that I request my legal team to fill in all the information corresponding to the let's say legal risk associated to each and every one of the different statements. Okay. So once we have this process, I can repeat these cycles for each and every one of the different teams, the financial one and the technical one. And I can also add a few comments if I'm the administrator or the responsible for this document itself. Okay. You will notice also that on the leftmost side, let me just highlight it for you. Here, this column, this ochre column, is basically representing the state within the source. In this case, we are talking about a PDF file. So we don't modify or we don't alter the nature of the PDF file, but we are indicating the user that a change has been performed on top of the, let's say, information that was brought and extracted from the PDF file. So in this case, it is basically indicating that we have indeed included a couple of attributes, additional attributes, and we have filled them in with information. Okay, let's proceed. So for the next step, we're going to save all this information into our ontology. And you will notice that the status on the left-hand side is the first thing that is going to change. And now instead of new and in green, we're going to have everything white and loaded. Okay. So all of this information is now within our repository. And the next thing that I would like to start doing is going to be creating a new baseline. Okay. Another of the topics or the issues that we mentioned before. So we don't have the possibility on top of a formal PDF file to create this sort of frozen image of the document itself. So now all my information concerning the PDF document is saved alongside with the additional attributes. And the next step for me is going to be tracing all this information with the next step in my systems engineering project. So in order to do so, in this example, I'm going to have available a doors module, which corresponds or contains the information for the system requirements. These different system requirements are going to be traced against specific statements within the regulation, right, that they must comply with. And in order to actually be able to start establishing those traces, the first step is going to be creating the traceability module. So in this case, the electrical regulation is going to regulate my system requirements. For the trace type, I want here a regulation, regulates. And I noticed that I actually didn't have it within my ontology. And as you can see, it is pretty straightforward to include it. So I added, and I go on to the Documents tab. And I'm going to proceed to select the source document, in this case, my PDF regulation, and the target, in this case, my system requirement specification. Once my module is created, you can see here that the number of traces is 0. The trace type is going to be regulate. And now I can proceed to access this traceability module. And simply by clicking on each side and selecting or multi-selecting the number of items that I want on each side, I can click the option to trace. And as you can see, a trace will automatically be generated. This is the manual option. I will also mention that we do have, let me just highlight here once again. We do have this middle ground, let's say, which is the suggestion algorithms. The suggestion algorithms basically allow you to perform this process that you have just seen, which was done manually, to perform it automatically, right? It requires a little bit more configuration and tailoring, right? But you can, with just a simple click, you can automatically generate the traces. They will be generated as pending to be approved or suspect, right? And then an administrator can just go through them and approve or deny them accordingly. But going back to the example, in this case, we can select one of the traces and inspect the details. So which of the source and target sites are connected and which is the information related to each and every one of the sites. Okay. So now that we have completed this process, we would continue on to work on our project. And I want you to imagine that, let's say, a period of time goes by, let's say a couple of months or a year, enough time for a new version of the regulation to be actually disclosed and published, and we have to deal with it, okay? So in order to do so, I just represented this idea or this concept by replacing the version 2.0, sorry, the original version 1.0 with the 2.0, the latest one, okay? In this case, on the left-hand side, we have the version 1.0, and on the right-hand side, the version 2.0. We're going to be comparing the most important changes that we have detected, okay? So in this case, a modification from 250 to 225 in the number of amperes. In the heading section, we can also detect a new change, and in this case is the addition of a new statement that can require, let's say, to be traced later. Another important aspect is going to be the deletion of a previously important statement. We have another modification here. So for the internal wiring, the let's say the width of or the thickness of the rubber that needs to cover the wires has been reduced, let's say, to at least 2.5 instead of 3. Okay. And for the last one, we will be talking, let me just dance a little bit. Yes, in this case, we have another removal, so another statement that will not be considered in the version 2.0. So it's pretty straightforward. As we mentioned before, we are speaking about the exact same connection. And now once we connect, as you can see here on the right-hand side, we also have our attributes, but the left-hand side is now a little bit different. As you can see, the first item, in this case, I will highlight it here. This first item is updated, as we mentioned before, from 250 to 225. We have the new with a automatically added identifier. So the new regulation statement is going to be incorporated here. And the one that we have removed is highlighted as well. For the last updated one is the one corresponding to the rubber, and it's now 2.5. Okay. And the final one is the one that we have mentioned last. So the last statement that we don't have to consider for version 2.0. One capability that we have available is to visualize the changes against the source. So right now we are comparing the latest version that we have right here against the previous one that we had stored inside our repository. Okay. You'll notice that the rest of the items are loaded because they do not have any sort of change. Okay. Now we save everything and we can proceed to compare both baselines, the one that we have previously created against the current one. Okay. So this is a great way to actually visualize all of the different changes that we have in the latest version against the previous one. Because in this case, we only have 30 to 35 items, which is pretty manageable. But if you have, let's say, 1,000 requirements or 1,000 statements, right, it is a little bit more complicated to just parse and go through them, right? Even more so in just one sitting. So we have the possibility to actually save the text, the current status of the connection. And for you to come back, let's say, if you finish today, let's say 50 of them, tomorrow another 50, and the next week, and so on and so forth. Okay. And this is, of course, the possibility to actually visualize all these changes without having to scroll through the entire document and just be focused on which items are actually affected by the latest version. So once we have compared which are the changes, I would like to move on to the traces, right? Because we defined a couple of traces between both sides. And what I will do now is basically execute the suspect traces software or the suspect traces algorithm in order to detect which of the traces have been affected by my latest version. As you can see, there are 4 in total, which are affected by a deletion, right? So in this case, the source ID, the regulation that we had before, has been removed. Okay. And as you can see on the bottom right-hand corner, I have the option to remove the trace automatically. After, of course, I have revised which are the appropriate changes. Okay. You'll notice that the 2 ones that we have on top highlighted, of course, are related to the regulation item 27, right? Because as I deleted that, all the ones that are impacted by this removal are going to be highlighted as well. This one corresponds to the number 6, which if we try to search for it on the left-hand side, on the PDF side, we're not going to find them there. Okay, we can proceed to do the same and remove the trace. And now the two last ones are going to be the suspect ones, which require a little bit more revision. I'm going to open up the trace details and I'm going to see exactly where has the change taken place. So this is the previous version, as you can see on the left-hand side, the 250, right? And for the target, I'm going to have the system requirement speaking about 230. So in this particular case, I define my upper threshold of amperes on 230. And this is going to be a problem because now the regulation has changed and the latest one contains an upper threshold of 225, right? So what I can do is, as I have my attribute of general risk here, I can move the general risk overall from medium to high, right? Just to consider the fact that the latest version of the regulation is a little bit more restrictive and we're actually over the top with the previous value on the system requirement. Okay. The same can be performed for the next one, which in this case is the thickness rubber one. And in this case, we're speaking about a 3mm thickness, and in the latest version, we have a 2.5. Let's say we acknowledge that this, in terms of the technical side, is actually a more lax requirement. But let's say that for the sake of the example, on the financial side or the legal side, this is going to be a little bit more complicated. And in this case, we're also going to be moving, let's say, the attribute corresponding to the risk of this requirement or of this statement, sorry, from medium to high. Okay, great. So once we have assessed all the different suspect traces, we can also visualize the global impact analysis, right? You can perform this operation before as well, but in this case, I've cleaned up everything and I wanted to show you, well, how you can visualize with just one simple click the relationship between the different items. I can see here that my regulation statement number 2 is related to 2 different system requirements. This view, in this example, this is very simplified, but this view can also showcase if I had traces against model components. Let me just open it a little bit more. If this particular statement from the regulation contained traces against model components, against physical components, against any other stakeholder requirements, so on and so forth, all these traces would be highlighted here as well, showing me as the user which is going to be the impact of the modification that has taken place, right? And whether or not I have to revise not only files or connections within my project, my temperature work project, which is this one, but also if I have other projects with the same, having to abide to the same regulation, I can see in one view, which is going to be the impact to also those projects, or which files particularly are going to be affected by the changes in the regulation. Okay. So with this, I believe we have no further showcase here, and we'll conclude the use case for the connection and integration of the PDF files into your systems engineering projects.
Awesome. So thank you, Jose, for this detailed hands-on presentation. Now we move to the questions and comments that you might have after this this presentation. So we have some questions in the chat box. So I will go one by one and tell them to you, and then you might be able to answer them right away, or if we need more time, then we might follow up with you after the webinar. So first question is, instead of applying filters in the beginning, can we import a PDF document as is and then make changes as required within the tool? The section hierarchy within the document is very important for us.
That's a wonderful question. Yes, indeed. You can actually select no extraction algorithm, and then you can access the edition window, let's say, and you can import all of it as a, let's say, bulk import without extracting specific sections within the document. And then you can actually go through it in the edition mode, and you can actually select the option to, let's say, identify these work items and bring all of them into your engineering view, let's say, right? So hopefully I answered your question. If you need a little bit more detailed explanation, I can definitely provide to you either here or via email, as Elias mentioned before.
Okay, second question. Could you please show how tables are imported into the tool within the PDF document?
That's a great, quick question. It is actually, let me just go back a little bit onto the showcase and open you here. Exactly, right. I did not get into detail with this bottom right-hand corner section because it is a little bit more complicated and it requires specific tailoring. Tables are very hard to import and to manage, right? As you probably know. This section 6 is specifically dedicated to those types of documents and files, right? Which the complexity that they incur is quite high, and you would require, let's say, a specific tailored algorithm to extract those tables, right? So in this external identification algorithm, this is something that our team can actually develop, and we include it as, say, in some sort of DLL, and you can import it here, and it automatically can extract information from those tables. Okay.
Okay, great. So next question. The PDF used in the demonstration containing the standard appeared to be pre-formatted. What happens if we use a native PDF as procured from the standardization organization without any modifications? And then there's a second question. How much additional work is typically needed to correct the structural errors, non-requirements interpreted as requirements, and incorrect paragraph or sentence detection post-import?
That's a great question as well. For the first one, let me tackle it first. So you can actually import, you can include here the document and do not select, let's say, any work products automatically, right? And you can just bring all the information into the document. As I was mentioning before, it's sort of a bulk import that we can call, right? Then you go on to the second question, which would be formatting that bulk import in order for you to have, let's say, the proper work products organized, right? This depends on the length of the document and the complexity of the document itself, right? The way in which the document has been generated initially also is important to consider, right? Because there is some PDF generators that include, once they turn back, once they are converted in our system, they include a lot of additional spacing, the new lines, and they're not, let's say, 100% consistent. This is why we included the edition mode, right? And in this edition mode, as I was mentioning, it would depend highly on the length and the structure of the document itself, right? But this is a process, fortunately, that we have also considered that it can take a little bit longer than expected, right? So we have the opportunity or the possibility for you to only save the text, not the state inside the repository, which basically means that you can work a little bit today on the formatting, work on the attributes, establish the traces, and perform the exact same workflow that we have mentioned. And then once you have finished with those first 50 items that you have already formatted, you can continue with the next ones subsequently, right? So hopefully I answered both questions fully. And if not, please feel free to let me know.
Okay, we then have another couple of questions. I think we have more time to answer them, so we can keep going. Does the tool have the capability to automatically approve suspect traces based on semantic analysis of the requirements, parent-child relationship?
I believe the possibility to suggest them is fully automatic, right? But the possibility to accept them, you can actually select let's say a couple of them. Let me just move you on to the section that displays this information. Okay. So for the traces, as you can see here, we have the option to accept the suggested traces, right? So you could select a couple of them and you could automatically, let's say in a bulk, accept them, right? But this is something that we tend to recommend to just revise them as you go. But in this case, if you know that the changes, for instance, in the statement are something that you cannot control, let's say, you cannot, let's say, reject a change in the regulation, of course, you can actually accept the traces, as you can see here, and resolve all the suspect links. Okay.
Okay, there's a question in reaction to the previous one about the tables. So the question is, so that means for every document that has tables, do we have to reach out to the team for them to update the algorithm? I would expect an option to create tables within the tool itself. It helps if the document has few tables only.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think this is a great discussion. The topic of the tables, it once again depends on the structure and the format of the table, right? Because if you have pretty different tables, you have tables, let's say, which are pretty standard tables, or you have tables, let's say, that contain images and also contain references, which are a little bit weirder, then you might have to require, let's say, two different tailoring DLLs, right? Let's say. But if the tables are pretty standard, you could, let's say, apply them to two different documents in this case, right? We'd have to study the specific case, of course, and maybe have a couple of adjustments for each one of them. But if in principle the structure is more or less the same, then you should not have any problem having the same DLL, right? Because it is adapted to a pretty standard. It can be adapted actually to a pretty standard format for the table, right?
Okay, so I see this question is generating a lot of reactions and it requires a longer discussion. So
Great.
If you need to discuss it with more details, just contact us, contact Jose, and we can follow up
Of course.
and discuss longer on the topic. I have a last question, which is related to the attributes in the connection. So is there a limit for the number of attributes we can include?
Great question. There is no actual limit, right? You can include as many as you want. And one important thing, let's say, that we should consider, is this the last question? Just to get into a little bit more detail.
Yeah, this is the last question.
Okay, great. So there's something that you can actually do, and it's basically you can include as many attributes as you want. And something that I did not mention in this particular case, but I think it's quite interesting, is that if you remember, I had at the beginning I had a couple of different attributes, right? So I had the legal, financial, technical. These are attributes that are filled in or must be filled in by different teams, different, let's say, responsibles. You can actually configure the view that you currently have, and you can add as many attributes as you want from the entire list of available attributes, and you can have a particular view for each specific type of user. So for instance, the legal team can have a specific view, while the technical team will have another completely different one. And in the legal view, you will not have access to the technical risk attributes, and of course, not modify them, right? And the technical team is going to have the opposite, right? So this is something which can be interesting to also consider, that the limit is, there's no limit in the terms of the number of attributes, and you can actually tailor the view with them as much as you want and for each particular type of user.
Okay, great. So there are no more questions. So just before we close this webinar, I'd like to introduce you with the next webinar that we'll be presenting. So this webinar will be held on the 22nd and 23rd of November. And the topic will be data dictionaries, the springboard towards high quality system requirements. And this webinar will focus on the impact of data dictionaries on requirements quality and show how well the data dictionaries team up with automated requirements verification in compliance with the latest version of the INCOSI guide to writing requirements, version 4. So I think that now we're done. I don't know if there's a last minute question here that might be answered. Otherwise, we can close the webinar. I don't see any more questions. So remember that if you have any comments after the webinar, you can write us an email, send Jose an email, or through the contact channel of the website. And yeah, for this webinar, the links are open to register, so you can visit our website to register for this webinar. So you see Jose, please send it to everyone, please.
Yeah, I don't think I have the option to send it to everyone.
I will copy it and send it.
Great, awesome, thank you.
So you have the email, Jose's email, in the chat box if you need more information or would like to discuss in detail this PDF connector. And for you especially interested in this table import and parsing of the PDF documents. So the recording will be available in a few days, and as well as the presentation. So stay tuned, and you'll be getting the information. So yeah, we can close now the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the very interesting questions, and I hope to see you soon on our next webinars. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you very much.